Welcome back to the Power Hour. This is Joyce Riley. Dave Von Kleiss will shortly be in New Hampshire. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is joining us today, and her website is Dr. Tenpenny, TenPenny.com, just like it sounds. She is a graduate of the University of Toledo in Ohio. She received her medical training at Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri. And she's board certified in emergency medicine and osteopathic manipulative medicine. And those of you who are in Strongsville, Ohio, are really fortunate because that's where her practice is. And she has a very unique practice in medicine. And the phone number there, I'm just going to give it to you in case you all need a good physician in the Strongsville, Ohio area. I cannot recommend Dr. Tenpenny enough. The phone number is 440-239-3438, 440-239-3438, and again, the website, drtenpenny.com. I have to tell you, if I ever had any doubts about Dr. Tenpenny, they were totally erased, ever. Of course, I didn't have any doubts, but I never would. However, when I saw her testify before the CDC meeting in St. Louis, whoa. She didn't mince words, and that's what I like. That is what I like. She stood up to all of them. She was a star at that hearing, I have to tell you all, ladies and gentlemen. I was there, and I got to see that woman in action, and I just thank her so very much for the great work that she's doing. Just want to tell you, in the next hour, Dr. Mohammed Dad Meraki is going to be joining us. Remember, he wrote the book, Afghanistan After Democracy. He is our expert on Afghanistan. He's from Afghanistan in the United States now, but he tells us what really is the truth about Afghanistan versus what you see on the mainstream media. Okay, we're going to get back to Dr. Tenpenny's discussion of vaccines. We need to talk about the HPV vaccine because that is absolutely what she believes critical to the discussion today, as well as autism and the autism trial that's going on in Washington, D.C. Then we'll take your phone calls, so give us just a few minutes here. And again, if you want to get in on questioning a question or comment with Dr. Tenpenny, 800-259-9231. But let me just say, please get the parent manual, the vaccine parent manual, or the documents of the CDC, or risks, benefits, and choices. They're all on special at the Power Hour right now. These are must books. If you vaccinate, get them. If you don't vaccinate, get them. Now, we're not telling you not to vaccinate because we give no medical advice on this program. This is for your educational and entertainment purposes only. But if you make the choice to vaccinate, know what you're doing. Now, Dr. Tenpenny, the subject of the HPV. I cannot think of anything more important to discuss right now regarding the lives and the health of young girls.
Yeah, I think that's going to be great. I want to add just one thing to what you were saying, Joyce, is that I have recently written about 20 new articles on vaccines. Each of these individual vaccines, one on Prevnar, one on hepatitis B. I wrote a new article that was just published a couple of days ago called Vaccines, Why Fear Sells. And all of those articles are available for free to all of your listeners. If they go to a website, it's called eZine Articles. It's E-Z-I-N-E, like magazine, eZineArticles.com, and put my name, Tenpenny, up in the search engine. They can get all of those articles, print them out, read them, pass them on to their friends.
Oh, thank you.
They're all available for free, and they can if any of your listeners has a website, they can post them on their website. They can pass them on to their friends. There's articles in there about Gardasil, about the one we're going to talk about in a minute. I've written 18 to 20 articles just since the 1st of May to make this information available to all of your listeners, and it's all available for free.
Well, see, that's a true educator for you listeners. They put them up there. They put them up there for free, and they say, please take advantage of this. Dr. Tenpenny wants to educate. That's her purpose, and so I thank you for putting that. Again, it's eZine, E-Z-I-N-E, articles.com, and put in Sherri Tenpenny. Okay, let's talk about this HPV.
It's just going to be another of the vaccine atrocities, Joyce. It's going to be just down the road. We're going to find all kinds of problems that will have evolved from this vaccine. It was released into general use June of last year, June of 2006, and since that time there have already been more than 1,600 reported side effects that have gone to theirs. Now, those are the only ones that have been reported. Since it's estimated that only somewhere between 1 and 10% are actually reported of the adverse events. It could be as many as 160,000 young girls have already had side effects to this vaccine in less than a year.
Okay, before we move on, let's define what the HPV vaccine is and what is VAERS.
The HPV vaccine is Gardasil. It's the one that's being reported on all of the news about being the new anti-cervical cancer vaccine and will keep people from getting cervical cancer. It contains 4 viruses, 2 viruses that have been shown to be associated with cervical cancer. I won't even go so far as to say cause cervical cancer because I don't think that they do. I think they've been shown to be associated with cervical cancer. And there's 2 other viruses that are associated with genital warts. So, and of those 2 viruses that have been associated with cervical cancer, there are at least 6 to 8 other viruses that have been shown to be associated with cervical cancer, and those are not covered in this vaccine. So it's going to give a very false sense of security that now that I've gotten this vaccine, I don't have to worry about cervical cancer anymore, and that's simply not the truth. The other thing is that cervical cancer usually happens in women somewhere between 35 and 50 years of age. It does not occur in 9 and 10-year-old girls. They have no idea how long these antibodies are going to last, and because of some of the contaminants that are in the vaccine, such as polysorbate 80, which is another one of those additives similar to the MF59 like we talked about earlier, they don't have any idea what's going to happen long-term for fertility. They don't have any idea what the long-term effects of this vaccine is going to be. It's been shown in the medical literature and in medical textbooks that if women get even 1 pap smear somewhere in their life, it decreases the incidence of cervical cancer by half, and that the vast majority of cervical cancer can be picked up on a pap smear and can be dealt with directly. So this is just a mess, and it's going to get messier as time goes on.
Can you think of any reason that a person would want to vaccinate their child with the HPV vaccine?
Well, no. I had to think about that a second, but I really can't, because what they're talking about is that, if the cervical cancer is a sexually transmitted disease, or if you can get the HPV virus through having sexual intercourse, that's really not going to happen very often in the 9 to 12-year-old population.
Bingo.
And so it's like, why do we want to vaccinate these kids? And then they've said that if you've already had sexual intercourse and you've possibly already been exposed to that virus and subsequently get the vaccine doesn't do you any good.
Oh, my.
And so there's no rhyme or reason to it. In fact, from a medical standpoint, I think the only reason for it is that the 3-shot series is $360.
Yes.
The massive amounts of money that's going to go to Merck that's going to offset their Vioxx losses is what I think it is. And also now that we pay, Joyce, we pay and pay and pay and pay for these vaccines. The government has funded new factories for the pharmaceutical industry for the flu shots. We pay off the people that approve it so that they get approved. Once they're approved, then our tax dollars go to Medicaid, and there's 4 different systems inside of Medicaid that pay to have kids vaccinated. Our insurance premiums go up because insurances are going to pay for this vaccine, whether you have children or whether you even want your children to have the vaccine or whether you don't want it at all. It will be reflected in your insurance premiums. And then when there are injuries from the vaccines, we pay and pay and pay for that. We pay and pay and pay for these vaccines in this country.
Let me ask you, is it true, as many people have told me, that if you have Medicaid, that you must vaccinate your children? Is that correct?
That's not correct. Now, there's a lot of pressure that happens, particularly with the WIC program and the Food for Children and the Milk for Children programs, that there are a lot of states that put a lot of pressure on parents that are inside of those programs to say that you must be fully vaccinated in order to get the benefit of having, the food stamps and the WIC, the Milk for Children program. But when you go and you actually read the state laws, which I haven't read all of them, but I've read many of them, and what it says is that these are required vaccines. I apologize. They're recommended vaccines, not required. And that parents do have a right to refuse in every state. I'm working on a new book right now, Joyce. I'm hoping to have it out by the fall called Exceptions to the Rules. which is your right to exercise, how to exercise your right to refuse vaccines.
Whoa, that sounds fantastic. Exceptions to the rules. Oh, thank you.
And I'm hoping to have that out by this fall. And what I'm actually looking at is all of these other individual types of things that you don't hear about a lot, like vaccine exemptions for the military, vaccine exemptions for WIC programs, vaccine exemptions for colleges. I mean, there's a bunch of things that you have to read the little bitty fine print, and you have to go actually read the public health laws, which is why it's taking me a little longer than I thought, because I'm having to plow through all this material to put it together for people who really want to have a manual to know how to exercise their right to refuse.
And I'll tell you, listeners, she does the research, because everything she does is built on research. It's not built on her opinion, I can assure you. Let's go to Louise in South Carolina. Louise, you're on the air with Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. Go ahead, please.
Hey, Joyce. How you doing, Dr. Tenpenny?
Yeah, good afternoon. Good morning.
Hey, Joyce, just want to say you're doing great solo.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thanks.
So I know you don't have your sidekick there with you today, but hey, he did great last week of solo, and you're doing the same great today.
Thank you. Well, we have to split up every once in a while so we can get more done, so I appreciate your saying that. Thank you so much, Louise.
Dr. Tenpenny, I was wanting to ask, and Joyce, if you have a comment about it too, you can go ahead and give your take on it, but I'm about to get a job. I'm in the hiring process right now for a job at a hospital, and as an interpreter there, and I was wanting to, I'm required to take a TB shot and a PPD shot, and I just wanted to get your take on, on those two shots, or I heard that they're the same thing.
Okay, well, why don't you listen off the air? Thank you very much, Louise, for the phone call. Okay, basically he wants to know about the hepatitis B and the TB test.
Yeah, this is one of the questions that comes up so many times, Joyce. I probably get several of these a week, and it's one of the things that's prompted me to start doing the background work to write this book, is because the healthcare industry is very militant about the TB test. In fact, I've had a couple of nurses who have told me that they've actually been threatened with the loss of their jobs. Mm-hmm. And I think that somebody is going to have to test this in court. Because it goes very much against state laws, and it's not really an accurate test. And then that's part of the problem, is that you can get a TB test, and it has such a wide range of variabilities of interpretation that you don't really know if it's a positive or a negative test or not. And each time that you get the TB test, you're actually injected with mycoplasma bacteria.
I did not know that.
That's what the PPD is. It's the prepared particles of mycoplasma, and that's what they're actually testing you for. The theory is that if you get the TB test and it turns out to be big and red and hot, then that means you have an infection. But quite frankly, when you read the literature, it could also mean that you've had a previous exposure and you're immune. And so there is a very lot of controversy for that. So in answer to your gentleman's question, I'm still not 100% sure how to advise you on that, other than to say that you should stand up for your rights and refuse it if you don't want it. As far as the hepatitis B vaccine, OSHA offers an exemption for all healthcare workers to not get the hepatitis B vaccine if you do not want it. OSHA actually has a form that you can fill out, and you can get the form right off of my website, so you don't have to go looking for it at drtenpenny.com. Go to at that site, go up to the top where it says forms, and when you click on that button that says forms, it will take you to a page where you can download that form that is an OSHA exemption, where you have the right to refuse the hepatitis B vaccine.
This whole program was worth that one thing you just said, and I am so grateful that we know that now. I did not know about the OSHA form, and listeners, for all of you nurses out there who contact me constantly asking this question, there is your answer. It's all at drtenpenny.com, and I am so...
And the thing is, Joyce, is that if you have the right to refuse the hepatitis B vaccine, then you should also have the right to refuse a TB test. And because if you are asymptomatic, no cough, no signs of TB, and you can get screened with a chest X-ray, which should be good enough. And there are a couple of other lab tests that people may be able to get, and I will be talking about that more in the book and on the website. But the hepatitis B vaccine, OSHA says you do not have to have it. And I went so far as to call several state organizations, OSHA organizations. I called Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and several others and said, if I refuse this vaccine, if I sign this form, this exemption for the hepatitis B vaccine, and somewhere down the road I get a needle stick and contract hepatitis B, can I still get disability from that? And they said, well, absolutely. That's an on-the-work injury. It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you refuse this vaccine.
Whoa.
So you have the right to refuse that from OSHA, from a government organization. There's an actual form, but you have to use exactly this form for it to qualify, and that's why I've made it available on my website.
Oh, thank you. That is wonderful. And also, by the way, there's